When Bumpy Johnson, Harlem's legendary kingpin, arrived at Alcatraz in June 1954, the universal law was simple: challenge authority or be broken by it. In a world where power meant survival, Johnson commanded respect from both inmates and staff. But in the heart of the rock, there was one figure he never dared test: Officer A.G. Bloomquist, the lone anomaly in a prison built on confrontation. Why would a man feared on the streets and inside the world's most brutal penitentiary choose strategic restraint with a single guard? The real story behind this silent pact changes everything you think you know about power. June 12, 1954. The prisoner manifest listed Ellsworth Raymond Johnson as inmate number 1117, transferred under heavy guard from Atlanta. The ferry ride across San Francisco Bay ended at the cold concrete dock of Alcatraz, America's fortress for the men considered unbreakable elsewhere. Johnson, already a legend from the Harlem streets, stepped off the boat with a reputation that trailed him like a shadow. In the cell house, the air was thick with a single, unwritten law: challenge authority, or be consumed by it. That rule had shaped every corner of the rock. Power isn't just a matter of muscle, but of perception. Who controlled the flow of information? Who could bend the routines without snapping them? Johnson's file was thick with warnings. Suspected of running rackets behind bars, known for orchestrating alliances and feuds alike. Alcatraz, though, was different. Here, every man was stripped to his number, and even the most feared crime bosses found themselves isolated in the echo of steel doors. Yet Johnson's presence unsettled the balance. Guards watched for the smallest sign of defiance. Inmates measured him with sidelong glances, waiting to see if the new arrival would test the system or bend it to his will. In this environment, survival depended on reading the room, knowing when to push and when to hold back. The stakes weren't just about keeping control. They were about staying alive. Every move mattered. Behind the routine of head counts and roll calls, a subtler game played out. A game where authority was both weapon and shield, and the cost of a single misstep could echo for years. Long before sunrise, the Alcatraz laundry room came alive with the drone of machines and the clatter of metal carts. Set deep in the prison's lower corridors, it was more than a place for washing uniforms. The laundry processed up to 3,500 pounds of linens and clothing every shift, making it one of the busiest and most essential workspaces on the island. Inmates assigned here moved through a maze of steam pipes, heavy presses, and sorting tables, their paths crossing in ways not possible elsewhere on the rock. The layout of the laundry offered a rare vantage point. From its core, workers could glimpse several main corridors, routes used by guards, supply carts, and sometimes the warden himself. The constant flow of laundry carts served as cover for quick exchanges of information, coded glances, and the subtle shifting of alliances. Orders barked by guards echoed off the concrete, but in the background, a quieter rhythm pulsed. Who was trusted to handle the clean sheets? Who was allowed near the loading dock? Who lingered near the office where records were kept? For the administration, staffing the laundry was a calculated move. Assignments weren't random. They were tools for managing influence and testing loyalties. Placing high-profile inmates like Johnson in the laundry meant putting them at the crossroads of movement and rumor, but always under watchful eyes. The room's sheer volume of work demanded efficiency and discipline, leaving little room for open defiance, but plenty of space for silent observation. In this environment, the usual pecking order blurred. Here, a sharp mind could spot opportunity in a misplaced towel or a brief conversation by the dryers. The laundry wasn't just a job. It was a nerve center, quietly shaping the balance of power inside the most secure prison in America. Johnson's first morning in the laundry room, the noise of the machines barely covered the tension. Officer Bloomquist stood at the center, clipboard in hand, eyes sweeping the room without lingering. He gave out assignments with the same clipped tone for everyone. No threats, no insults, just the expectation that the work would get done. In a place where most guards used their position to remind inmates who held the power, Bloomquist's approach was different. His personnel record, thin on disciplinary complaints and absent any charges of excessive force, spoke to a reputation built on consistency rather than intimidation. Johnson watched, taking in the rhythm of the operation. There was no drama, no grandstanding. Bloomquist enforced the rules, but he didn't look for reasons to escalate. When Johnson's name came up on the assignment sheet, Bloomquist didn't pause or offer a warning. He simply pointed to a row of laundry carts and moved on. The message was clear: do the job, and nothing more would be asked. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Johnson responded with a nod, a gesture that didn't invite conversation, but acknowledged the terms. It was the beginning of an understanding, one that didn't need words. The laundry room under Bloomquist's watch became a space where the usual games of status and provocation lost their edge. There would be no open challenges, no tests of will for the sake of reputation. Instead, both men recognized the value in predictability. The code was simple: respect the boundaries, and the boundaries would hold. This silent agreement would come to define their interactions, setting the tone for every move that followed. A man like Johnson, forged in the chaos of Harlem's numbers rackets and gangland politics, didn't survive by being the loudest or the most violent. He survived by reading the board, calculating every move, and knowing which battles to pick and which to avoid. Entirely. Inside Alcatraz, that instinct sharpened. The code he lived by wasn't about blind obedience or fear. It was about weighing risk against reward, understanding that sometimes the greatest threat came not from a rival inmate, but from a disruption in the balance of power itself. In the world Johnson came from, respect was currency, and every decision carried a price. The prison's unwritten maxim, challenge authority or be consumed by it, wasn't just a slogan. It was a constant test. But in the laundry room, under Bloomquist's watch, a different kind of logic applied. Here the rules resembled the Cold War doctrine of mutually assured destruction. Any open challenge would trigger consequences that rippled far beyond the individuals involved. It was a standoff built on the certainty that neither side could win by pushing too far. Johnson understood that a single misstep could cost him not just his standing, but his ability to operate at all. This was more than caution. It was a calculated risk, scored high, 8 out of 10, on any scale of prison danger. Johnson's diary, kept in code and smuggled out in fragments, hinted at the mental math behind his restraint. He wrote about the value of predictability, of knowing exactly how far he could go before the system snapped back. Bloomquist's consistency offered a rare variable Johnson could trust. Unlike other guards who ruled by fear or unpredictability, Bloomquist's approach created a space where both men could maintain their positions without forcing a confrontation. The result was a kind of silent treaty. Johnson's influence remained intact, but only because he recognized the cost of breaking the balance. In that sense, restraint wasn't weakness. It was the highest form of control. The calculus was clear: survive, adapt, and never be the one to tip the scales. That was the code, and for Johnson, it was the only way to play the long game inside America's toughest prison. Whitey Bulger's first weeks in the Alcatraz laundry brought a crash course in the prison's unwritten laws. At just 29, Bulger was already familiar with the violence and politics of the federal system, but the rhythms in Bloomquist's domain felt different. Assigned as a messenger, Bulger crisscrossed the maze of machines and steam, carrying notes and supplies between workstations. The job gave him a ringside seat to the daily exchanges between inmates and Officer Bloomquist, and soon he started keeping a record: short, coded entries scribbled in a battered notebook, hidden under his mattress. Bulger watched as other guards barked orders or picked fights over minor mistakes, eager to assert control. Finesse rarely entered the equation, but Bloomquist moved through the room with a steady calm, never raising his voice or threatening punishment without cause. He enforced rules, but he didn't go looking for trouble. The result was a workspace that ran smoother than most on the Rock. Even inmates with reputations for violence kept their heads down and their hands busy when Bloomquist was on duty. Bulger's notes from 1956 mention a riot in another part of the prison, sparked by a guard's careless provocation. The laundry, by contrast, stayed quiet. Messenger routes became informal lines of communication, but the usual gossip about guards didn't stick to Bloomquist. Bulger wrote, "Laundry, no one steps out of line. Bloomquist not like the others. Even the big shots keep it cool." What struck Bulger most was the way Johnson and Bloomquist operated around each other. No threats, no posturing, just a silent understanding. Bulger compared it to a chess match, each man calculating several moves ahead, neither willing to make the first mistake. He later told fellow inmates that the real lesson was not about who could throw a punch or stage a protest. It was about knowing when to hold back, to let the other man keep his dignity, so everyone could get through the day in one piece. In a place where respect usually came at the end of a fist or a shank, the laundry room offered a rare kind of order. Bulger's observations, passed quietly among trusted friends, helped shape how younger inmates navigated the shifting ground of Alcatraz. The code in action, seen through Bulger's eyes, was less about fear than about survival, and it left an impression that lasted long after the laundry carts stopped rolling. October 22, 1959. The laundry's steam clouded the air, but the tension was sharper than usual. Frank Caruso, a short-tempered Chicago enforcer with a record for violence both inside and outside, was already on edge. His transfer papers listed 2 assaults in the last year alone. That morning, Caruso's patience snapped. He shoved a cart into the aisle, blocking the path, and when Officer Bloomquist ordered him to move, Caruso didn't back down. Instead, he locked eyes with Bloomquist, jaw clenched, and in a single quick motion, grabbed the guard's baton straight from his belt. The shift log would later record the time, 7:41 a.m., but in that instant, the routine of the laundry shattered. Caruso's knuckles whitened around the heavy stick. For a full second, Nobody moved. The whir of the dryers was the only sound. Bloomquist didn't shout. He didn't reach for his keys or call for backup. Instead, he squared his stance and fixed Caruso with a level stare, voice low but clear. "Put it down." Inmates along the folding tables froze, eyes darting between the two men. The balance of the room hung on a knife's edge. Caruso, breathing hard, weighed his options. He had seen guards lose control before, but Bloomquist's calm didn't waver. Every man in the room understood what could come next: blood on the floor, a lockdown that would last for days, and consequences that would ripple through every cell block. But in that suspended moment, the only thing that mattered was the space between Caruso's hand and Bloomquist's command. The next move would set the tone for everyone watching. Caruso's grip tightened on the baton, sweat beading on his brow. The room seemed to contract around that single, silent standoff. Every man, from the greenest new arrival to the old-timers folding sheets, knew violence could erupt in a heartbeat. But what happened next upended every expectation. Johnson, standing just beyond the circle of tension, caught Bloomquist's eye. Without a word, he gave a single, curt nod, a gesture not of surrender, but of recognition. In that instant, the air shifted. Caruso hesitated, then let the baton drop to the concrete with a dull clang. The spell broke, and the room exhaled as Bloomquist calmly picked up the baton and signaled Caruso to the wall. No yelling, no threats. The official incident memo, later filed in the warden's office, recorded the facts in dry language. Inmate Caruso relinquished unauthorized possession of officer's baton following verbal directive. Situation de-escalated without force. No injuries reported. But the real story traveled faster than any memo. Word spread through the cell blocks that morning. Johnson hadn't backed the troublemaker or exploited the chaos. Instead, he had reinforced the very order that kept the laundry running. It wasn't an alliance in the usual sense, but a public acknowledgement of boundaries that even the most dangerous men respected. Bloomquist's superiors issued a standard directive: maintain heightened vigilance, review safety protocols. Yet among the inmates, the message was clear. The rules in the laundry weren't written on any wall, but everyone understood them now. Power, in this corner of Alcatraz, was measured not by who shouted loudest or struck first, but by who could hold the line with nothing more than a nod. The shockwave from that morning rippled outward, reinforcing a new equilibrium, one built on restraint and on the rare certainty that both sides would honor it. 2 days after the laundry room standoff, the administration acted with quiet precision. Bloomquist received a formal commendation. His personnel record now included a notation for exceptional conflict de-escalation under duress, dated October 24, 1959. The warden's memo circulated among senior staff, emphasizing the need for steady hands in high-risk assignments. By the end of the week, Bloomquist was reassigned to oversee the prison library, a post rarely given to line officers. The transfer wasn't a demotion or a reward in the usual sense. Instead, it placed him at the crossroads of inmate learning and communication, expanding his reach beyond the laundry's walls. The new badge, issued in early 1960, carried the number 208, a quiet signal of trust from the administration. For Johnson, the change altered the daily rhythm. Access to the library meant a new set of routines and opportunities, But it also meant Blomquist's steady presence now shaped a different environment. Legal files, newspapers, and correspondence passed through the library's counters, and Johnson understood the importance of this new gatekeeper. The incident's aftermath wasn't just a matter of paperwork or commendations. It shifted the patterns of respect and caution that governed daily life, reminding every man on the rock that the system watched, measured, and responded, even when the real story never made it past the island's walls. By the early 1960s, the lessons of the Alcatraz laundry room had begun to echo far beyond the island's walls. Johnson's approach, choosing when to assert power and when to withhold it, became a subject of quiet discussion among both inmates and reform-minded staff. In 1963, shortly after his release, Johnson reflected in a letter to his wife on the value of knowing the difference between a fight and a loss. That phrase would later resurface in academic circles as sociologists and prison reform advocates searched for models of nonviolent influence inside rigid systems. Decades later, Dr. Elena Rossi, a leading scholar on carceral power, published a 2022 paper that traced the roots of what she called the Blomquist effect. Drawing on interviews, policy documents, and coded references from Johnson's own writings, Rossi argued that the restraint shown in Alcatraz's laundry room represented a rare form of institutional equilibrium. Her analysis found its way into federal reform proposals, cited as evidence that predictability and fairness, not brute force, could stabilize even the harshest environments. The story's resonance reached beyond prison walls. In policy debates and academic seminars, Johnson's calculated restraint became shorthand for a smarter kind of survival. It wasn't the loudest voice or the strongest fist that lasted, but the one who understood the cost of every move. The legacy of that silent agreement, forged in the steam and noise of Alcatraz, offered a new framework for thinking about power, one that still shapes conversations about authority and resistance today. Power in closed systems rarely comes from brute force. It comes from calculation, restraint, and knowing when to hold the line. Today, the ability to read a room and weigh conflict remains a survival skill in every high-stakes environment, from boardrooms to prisons. Sometimes, the strongest move is not to strike, but to wait. The real test is knowing the difference. What would you do in that moment?